Welcome to our ERPAL for Service Provider screencast. In this screencast, I want to show you how you can customize and configure your ERPAL installation so that it matches all your individual requirements. If you installed ERPAL, you will see this administration menu that is only visible for the admin user. If you add other people with non-administration roles to your ERPAL installation, they will not have access to this administration menu. As you can see, we have added a menu point for ERPAL where you can access all the ERPAL settings. So just click on ERPAL and you will see the start page of the ERPAL configuration form. First of all, during the installation process, you entered your company contact information, and these contact information will be saved in a CRM contact. You can see this contact just by clicking the show button. Here you have all the information that you entered during the installation process. Going back to our ERPAL settings form, you also see the address field. As a contact can have multiple addresses assigned to it, you need to choose which one is the main address that will be placed, for example, on your invoices. In our case, we only have one address, and this is why we only have one item to select here. You can, if you want to change the contact, you can create a new contact and assign it as my company, but this is a very rare use case, and as you've entered this contact for your company once, you will most likely never change it. You can change the country terms. I open this in a new tab. Here you can add new countries or change existing countries. They have been imported during the installation process, but you are free to change them as you want. This will not influence the update process of ERPAL. So any customization or any configuration that I will show you in this screencast has no effect to the update capabilities of ERPAL. So if you change something that I show you in this screencast, these changes will not be lost once you update your ERPAL installation with a newer version. You can open the document settings, and in the document settings you can upload an OpenOffice or LibreOffice template document. This document is used for exporting documents in ERPAL. There is also another screencast presenting the documents to you, but to give you a short overview, these are the documents, and if you have a document created, you can just click export in the right navigation of the document, and then your document will export it and individually rendered into your company's CI that you can upload here. Also, you can upload a logo for your documents, and this logo will also be placed in your invoices if you just use the default ERPAL invoice templates. So you are able to customize your invoice layout or invoice CI according to your needs by uploading this logo and filling in the information in the footer form. You can use HTML here, and this footer will be placed below your invoices. If you scroll down in the form, you can change the date format. It is related to your country where your company is situated. So you can already choose some default formats. I think the one that you want to use is already included. Or you can just create custom date and time formats by just adding a new format here. And this will be added to this list box that you can select it here. These are the ERPAL basic configurations. Let's proceed with a CRM, as this is usually the next step with what you want to work in ERPAL. Each activity has a status. That means if the CRM activity was just placed by a customer, or if you submitted a quote, or if the order was placed, all these statuses can be changed in the activity status terms As you can see, these are the default terms that are added during the installation process. But as you can do it with all other taxonomies, you can just edit them or you can add new terms. What is pretty important to have workflows in ERPAL is that ERPAL knows what these taxonomy terms mean. So if you create a new term, you should add a semantic process category. That means whenever you add a new term, you should tell ERPAL if this means the sales activity is still in progress, or if it was successfully completed, or if it was aborted. So this is important to have realistic reports about how many of your sales activities led to an order or how many of them have been declined and no order was placed. If you click Use as Default, that means whenever you create a new activity, the default will be exactly this term that you edit right now. In our case, it is aborted. If you set a term to default and click Save, you will get a warning that you cannot save the form because there is another term that is set to default and you can have only one default. So clicking to the customer request term and clicking Edit, you will see that this term is already set to be a default. And as you can see, if you create a new activity, customer request is the default. And this default flag is available in almost any of the taxonomies. And also the semantic process category is also available in your task status terms and in your project status terms that I want to show you in a few minutes. Let's proceed with the CRM. There is also a module that creates tasks for each CRM activity so that you are able to track time on your sales activity and you can report how much time you spend in your sales activity and how much money you earn with your customers. All this functionality is explained in our ERPAL monitoring and reporting screencast. What is important for you is just to notice these settings here. They are also pre-filled during the installation process, where you see that one project for internal work has been created, and this is set as the project for your sales activity. If you want a new project, you can just create a new project in your projects list and assign this project here. If you want to add the tasks created by a sales activity as a child task of an existing parent task, you can just pick this task here and new sales activity tasks will be added as a child task of this parent. You can also change the settings here to enable or disable this feature completely with this flag here. So what is also pretty important is that this setting here helps you to map the statuses in a CRM activity that I showed you before in the taxonomy terms of CRM activity terms and between the task status terms. So if you create a new activity, let's do this for our example. New activity. And our customer is our own company. Just save this. And if you access this activity, you will see on the right side that there is a task created where you can track your time on, that you can assign to a user, and that you can access in the detail form. Currently it's set to inserted. If you change the status of the activity and the mapping is added here, you can just tell, for example, that quote accepted in the CRM activity means, let's say, completed for the task. That means if you set the CRM activity to quote accepted, your task will be set to completed. And with this automation that you can disable here, You prevent your users from changing the status on the CRM activity and changing the status on the task activities that is assigned. So let's go back to the CRM activity and change the status to accepted. Save. And now go back to our task. And here you see that a task has been set to completed because nothing to do. The quote was accepted. This is one process where ERPAL helps you to automate your processes in a very easy way. For Drupal developers, it is also possible that you install the rules module and that you change your workflow transitions between different entities just as you want. If you know rules, it's very easy to add this functionality to ERPAL. But for users that are not used to Drupal and to the rules module, you can just enable or disable and configure these workflow transitions between CRM and projects in these settings here. Let's continue with the projects. So it is possible that you can create release documents, and if you don't override the document settings that I've shown you in ERPAL Basic Settings form, you can just click Override Document Settings and select a different logo and add a different footer for your settings. Most likely this is not necessary as you want to use your basic document settings. You have several budget settings. That means if you add a time budget to your project or to your task and you want to send a notification by mail whenever this budget is close to limit, for example by 90%, this is the value that you change if you want to get a warning by 75%, and you can change the subject and the body of the email that is sent to, for example, the project manager. You can use these tokens here. These are placeholders to fill information from the related task or from the related project. This is also possible for time trackings. You can write down a title for your time trackings that will be set as default. You can just use a token for the task title where your time was tracked on, and you can change the text, whatever you want to have written here. It's up to you just to change the default title of a time tracking. If you want to avoid that users track time for, let's say, 1 minute and you want only to charge your customers by each 15 minutes, you can just round the time tracking duration, and there is another form to round the time tracking billing duration, because time trackings have two different durations. The one is the time that you tracked, and this is added to your employee timekeeping reports. And the other one is the time that will be billed to your customer. So you have two different roundings by minutes. That means every 15 minutes are rounded, and in this case every 20 minutes are rounded. Below you have several links again to taxonomy terms. Most important are the task and project category terms, status terms for projects and tasks, and all the other taxonomy terms are related. So let's see the project taxonomy terms. These are categories for your time trackings. This is only important if you want to get reports about how much time you spent with conception, with front-end development, and so on. This has no influence to your workflow. It's only to categorize your tasks. Project status terms, they are more important for the workflow, because if you add a fixed price to your project and you set the project status to, for example, completed, then a billable will be created that you can include into your invoice. So it is again important that you tell Drupal what these status terms means. If it means completed, as in this case, or if it means in progress, for example, the term inserted means it is still in progress, so the task or the project is not yet completed. That means we cannot include it into our invoice. And you can just set the default term, as we can do this in any other term too. And the same behavior for the task status terms. They are separated, as projects can have different statuses as tasks, but the semantic meaning should be the same, and you can change it here. If you want different icons, you can just remove the default icon and upload an own icon. This will be used to show your tasks, for example in task lists or in any other view where tasks are referenced by other data types or other entities. This progress automation is used to change the status of the tasks. For example, a task has a percent value that tells you how much the progress of the task is. And if a task is set to buggy, you can change the progress status related to 60%, or if it is buggy and you think there needs to be done lots of work, it's 20% as a default. And you can just change the method. That means if you set maximum and the task status, the task progress has been 80% previously, and now the task is set to buggy, and you want it to set to 20%, this will not be done. The 80% remains. If you set it to set minimum, then the minimum of the previous value and the current value will be set. In our case, it's 20%. So these are the functions that you can influence by changing the task status terms. And again, if you are a Drupal developer or site builder, you can use the rules module to change the workflow transitions between tasks, projects, and any other entities. Let's go back to our project settings form. You have some project permissions where you can just change if a user is able to view, for example, the tasks or the tickets. If you can view any task or any ticket, this is a very heavy configuration form, as you know this from Drupal. And you can change almost anything related to every module. So this configuration form, it can be accessed by clicking on people and permissions. It is separated into different roles, and you can add different roles to your users. That means in our case, for example, view any billable. Only the financial user can view billables and the project manager can view billables. And if you click to people and if you want to add a new user, in this form you can select the role, and to these roles the permissions I have shown you previously are assigned, and they will present the role of your user in ERPAL, and the role of your user in ERPAL will influence the permissions and the visibility of entities and views the user has in ERPAL. So let's go back to our ERPAL settings again and proceed with the book settings. This is only a very basic page where you can add another logo that is displayed on the front page of an exported book. I have told you previously that you can export your documents in ERPAL. These are the books. The data type book is used for documents. You can export it to an open office or LibreOffice document, and if you want to have a front page, you can place your company logo here and upload it in this form element. Then we have the calendar, and you may get notifications whenever a task or whenever a calendar, an appointment is assigned to you or to a user. You can change the subject and the message of the email notification, and you can use again these placeholders to have dynamic subjects and dynamic bodies of your email. As I've shown in the screencast about how to use the calendar in ERPAL, there is a setting that creates a new calendar entity, a date item entity, whenever you add a date to an entity. For example, if you create a CRM activity with a next contact date where you want to catch up your customer to talk about your quote, and you change the next contact date to a new date, this will appear in the calendar as a date item, and it will have a category CRM. So in the calendar you can filter to view only projects, only tasks, or only CRM appointments, and this makes it easy to get an overview what needs to be done in the CRM context next. So these settings below are used for employee holiday tags. That means whenever an employee creates a new timekeeping and he changes the type to holiday, the tag holiday will be set to the date item. And if he changes day off, the tag day off will be set. The same for ill days, but you are free just to customize and change these category names. Let's proceed with the contacts. This is just for the reports. If you add a new contract and the contract is a recurring payment, that means you will have, for example, an invoice each month that you send to your customer to pay for this contract, and this will be done for the next 12 months. You can change how many months you want to pre-calculate the range of your contract revenue for the reports. This is rather high as default, so you can just change it to have only forecast for the next 10 months, for example. ERPAL CRM we already walked through. ERPAL Docs, you can change the document types that can be uploaded on the files. By default we have quite a lot of extensions of files, but if you miss one, you are free to extend these settings here. You should only take care not to add, for example, PHP or Excel files, because this may have a bad influence on the security of your system. ERPAL Employee, these are the settings for the timekeepings, and as you want to give your users or your employees the opportunity to take holidays from 1 year into the first quarter, for example, of the next year, if they didn't use all the holidays in the previous year, you can just add the setting here. That means how many months the holidays can be taken in the next year. If there is written 3, the user or the employee can use his available holidays from the last year in the current year, but only till the month March. And for calculation of your employees' overtime, you need to set the general working days. In our settings, it's Monday till Friday. You may add Saturday here. This means that your employees have usual working day on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. Let's go to our ERPAL invoice settings, and in this invoice settings form you can just get a link to the ERPAL basic form where you can change, I want to show you again, the document settings and upload your company's logo and add a footer. This will be added to your invoice PDFs that can be exported. As you will see in other screencasts, for example in the project management or controlling and monitoring screencasts, whenever you have an action in ERPAL that should create a revenue, and this is called a billable in our ERPAL, it will have a text, and this text should be related to the action. That means if you have a task and this is a fixed price task, you complete this task, set the status to completed, then you want this text to be written on the billable. If you have a project that is set to completed, the billable will have this text. And you have many placeholders, they are all listed below. You can use the placeholders to have dynamic values for your billables. Grouping billables text means if you have, for example, for your time trackings, the billables, you will not have a line item in your invoices for each time tracking. You want to group them together as you have only one line item and have a invoice report or attachment that just lists all the details of your time trackings. And the text or the label of the billable that is created with the grouping action is described here, again with placeholders. The same for time tracking. You can add any placeholder that is available here. The same for recurring contracts. You can use different tokens to describe the label or the title of billables created by contracts. Company settings will just lead you again to the basic settings where you can change your company settings. One important thing might be the invoice number settings. Here you can just change the invoice number pattern. If you want to add a prefix, you can just add the prefix as you want and include the token, the placeholder for your invoice number. You can just change the offset if you already created invoices in the running year and you created already, let's say, 20 invoices. Your offset might be 20 and it is described in the description below that the next invoice number will be 20 plus 1, 21 in this case. As during the installation process you added your default currency, this is added by default to the settings, and if you want to add other currencies you want to work with, for example US dollar, you can just type the short name of the currency followed by the label US dollar. Here you can change the default currency, which one is used as default, and in the same way you can change the default taxes. If you have sales tax, for example, let's say 9%, and this has a label 9% sales tax. So whenever you create a fixed price task or add any other pricing information to a contract to a task, then you can change these tax rate settings here with the values that you entered in this text box. And you want to have a default tax rate. This can be set here. It's not only VAT, it's any tax that you want to add, and you can give it a label. The default credit period, you can just add multiple credit periods and set the default here. That means if you create an invoice at the 1st of January and at a 14, your invoice needs to be paid till the 15th of January. This is 14 days of credit period that you add to your customer settings. And as you have these defaults in every contact of your CRM, you can override these default settings by the invoice default settings of your contacts. You can add some default notes, again including placeholders. If you work with discounts and sconto, you can add the sconto information here. You can add the default sconto rate and percent values. If you copy an invoice, you can leave a label on your invoice. It is copy by default, or you can just translate it into your local word. And if you cancel an invoice, then you can place this text to the invoice. We also have the possibility to add customer portals. That means you can grant access to your customers to their invoices. So you can just enable this access control for invoices, and only customers that have access to ERPAL and this user is referenced to a CRM contact, they will see the invoices that are related. These are all the settings that are accessible in this ERPAL administration menu. And of course, this is just a Drupal installation. You can change all the settings accessible in the administration menu as you know this from Drupal. Another very important feature is to customize your invoice templates. You can just upload your own logo in the ERPAL basic settings, but it is also possible to add a custom template file. That means you can change the path to your invoice template file. It must end with tpl.php, and you can change the path of your invoice attachment template file. You will get more detailed information how to customize your invoice templates in the screencast for working with invoices. That's it for our current screencast. Thanks for your time and see you in our next screencast for ERPAL for service providers.